cabinet position, which doesn't have to be confirmed by the Commission on Appointments.
Right, and the president may or may not do that.
Doesn't have to.
Right. Okay, so now let's go to Ronald Holmes of Pulse Asia. First, I want to talk about the statement recently released by the UP School of Statistics, which cautioned the public against possible unreliable survey results because of what it called unclear methodologies. So maybe you can tell us about how important the methodologies are and what are the most stringent methodologies that should be used in order to come up with credible survey results.
Well, the methodology has to be following a probabilistic design. That means everyone in the voting population has the equal chance of being selected. And it's only to that probabilistic method that you can talk about a nationally representative survey. If you don't follow a random sampling, then that means that the survey should only be generalized pertaining to the sample where it was taken or the universe where it was taken. So that's quite important. You can do online surveys that have probabilistic designs, but given the digital divide, the online survey might rule out a segment of the population. So there are things that have to be followed in terms of surveys, and we really have to define what the methodology, find out what the methodology is, so that you can distinguish what will be representative and what would not be representative of the population.
All right, Professor Dennis Coronation, let's go to you now. The coming elections will be a first under this pandemic that has changed our lives greatly over the last 2 years. Will this health crisis be a factor when Filipinos cast their vote on May 9th?
Well, actually, this is already the second time that we're going to hold an election during the pandemic.
Manny
The first one.
Lopez. So he was also the last 3 p.m. and 2 hours pa before the debate. So sa ngayon, iniintay pa yung ibang candidates and they will be briefed habang ongoing yung pre-debate na program ng CNN Philippines. Yung mga candidates naman will be briefed about the debate proper later at 5 p.m. And now, dumating na rin po dito sa pavilion si Dr. Willie Ong. He is the running mate of in this debate. So kanina po, yung mga nauna na is si Rizalito David. Dumating na rin po siya dito sa pavilion kanina lang. And if we can recall, many people or some people know him as the man who filed yung disqualification or yung case against Grace Poe ng 2016 elections. And he's not new sa mga presidential polls. He also tried to join yung 2016 presidential race when he was declared the nuisance candidate. And then he tried also his luck at the Senate, pero hindi rin siya pinala noon. And we also had si Professor Walden Bello. He is the running mate of Calio de Guzman. Doon na din po siya sa loob. Binibrief about this debate that we are having. And right now, we
SH Thrift Shop, Santa Maria, Zamboanga City. Urban Engineering and Building Contractor, RDM, S33 Enterprises, Alfaro Street, Tetuan, Zamboanga City. Ayala Recodo Operators and Drivers Transport Service Cooperative, Sangkula Rice Dealer, Alamia Trading.
This portion is brought to you by ang Bumbero ng Bayan, ABB, NFCPI, National Firemen's Confederation of the Philippines Party List.
O diesel.
Energy ability ang ginagawa. Plus,
Sasakyang energy efficient equals
energy efficient transportation.
Project Finish!
Ang purpose ng dessert, i-reward ang masipag with layers of sarap.
I-Nestle all-purpose cream mo. Para rich, thick, and creamy.
Reward ready! Finish!
Nestle All-Purpose Cream.
In everything you do, make sure you choose what's true.
We always follow our hearts, so true adventures come our paths.
Dreams and aspirations, giving spark to all our passions.
Stay true and you'll know what to do.
And choose the bonds that are true.
We choose what's true. We choose GSM Blue. Choose what's true. Kasama mo ang GSM Blue. Choose what's true.
Choose what's true.
Dahil ito ang GSM Blue.
Welcome back to the program. In a few moments, CNN Philippines will be holding our vice presidential debate with 7 of the 9 candidates in this year's polls. Let's get the latest situation from the University of Santo Tomas, where the debate will take place. Our David Santos and Trisha Terada now join us live from inside the Quadricentennial Pavilion. And let's start with you, David. This vice presidential debate will be without people in attendance. It has got to be different from the ones we've had in the past. What is it like on the ground right now?
But Ria, it's going to be very different. We were here in the exact same spot in 2016. This part of the bleacher was filled with people at that time, around this hour, mostly candidates, supporters. Now, the bleachers are now virtually empty. It will be interesting how this will play out. I mean, having a big live audience back in 2016 had its pros and cons. On the upside, it can test the candidate's character on stage, especially when he or she was being booed or heckled. Now, you get to see how they react or how they manage to retain grace and composure amid intense pressure. On the downside, noise and interruptions from a huge crowd can also be distracting and disruptive, and it can affect the candidate's train of thought or his or her arguments. Now, we saw that happened to then Vice Presidential candidate Bongbong Marcos during the 2016 VP debates. He was interrupted several times by heckling, to which some pundits said somehow affected his performance that time. Now, well, we don't see this happening this time. There will be a limited number of people watching the debates live, mostly members of the candidates and entourage, as well as observers from the Commission on Elections. But not only there is a significantly smaller crowd in the audience, cheering and heckling will also be discouraged. I guess the only time there will be cheering is when the candidates will be introduced on stage and when the debate ends. Otherwise, the live audience here will have to remain silent throughout this 2-hour showdown. Now, Microsoft Philippines is introducing a technological innovation for these back-to-back debates, the virtual audience. For that, it is tapping the Microsoft Teams technology, a platform, it says, with about 270 million users globally every month. Now, for this afternoon, 300 team users from different parts of the country, as well as cross-section of the society like women and youth groups, the LGBT, PWD, the academe, will be joining the debate remotely remotely from the comforts of their homes or wherever they are now. Now, all these precautions, of course, are in compliance with the government's safety protocols amid this pandemic, Ria.
Sure, it's not mandatory, but participation says a lot about the candidate. It demonstrates their profound national commitment ahead of the general elections on May 9th.
On Saturday, February 26th, CNN Philippines will ask the vice presidential candidates the hard question.
And on February 27, we'll turn our attention to the men and women seeking the highest office of the land.
Mayor Rizalito David won't make it today because of medical reasons. Well, as far as Duterte Army is concerned, we've been asking her camp for a reason why they couldn't make it. But until now, as of
they have confirmed their attendance, ready to face the news. Ready to answer your questions, to promote accountability.
So there are certain health protocols
side by side.
For example, there will be no handshakes between the candidates
on one stage.
David, what else should we know about the safety and security measures, and
on
also
one
tell us a little bit about the format and what to expect from this afternoon's debate and what it will look like?
Well, if you can see behind me, the limited seats on the floor are strategically placed so people will be spaced out inside this auditorium. Prior to coming on stage, the candidates and their entourage were ushered to separate rooms at the Father Roque Ruyano building just across this debate hall. That sort of served as their bubble prior to this debates, although I understand Doc Willie Ong and his wife visited the room of Senator Kiko Pangilinan shortly after their arrival here at UST. Now, everybody needs to present a negative COVID test result as well as their vaccination cards. Mask wearing is compulsory. Trisha and I are standing several meters away from the debate floor so we can take off our masks for the meantime, but we'll have to put it on back again later when the debate starts. Now, the only exceptions for masks wearing are the 9 people who will be on the stage. There are CNN anchors Rico Izon and Ruth Cabal, who will serve as this afternoon's moderators, and then the 7 presidential candidates appearing this afternoon. Spots will be kept for Sara Duterte and Lito Atienza, who are both not participating today. The candidates will be given a 30 and rather a minute and 30 for their opening and closing statements. They will also have a minute and 30 to respond to questions during the debate proper, and another minute for rebuttal and counter rebuttal. They will battle it out on different segments with carefully selected topics from the pandemic, the economy, foreign policy, corruption, among other big issues, Ria.
All right, Trisha, let's talk strategy and preparations. What do you know about how the candidates are getting ready for this debate, and what will their strategies be this afternoon?
Well, you know, Ria, although Mayor Sara Duterte is not around, some say that her absence itself could be a strategy. As what I've said, there is no clear reason why she didn't take part in this event, although it's not required and she is campaigning somewhere else. We've seen how debates in the past have made an impact in a candidate's survey ranking, so her decision not to appear in the debate could be a strategy in itself. As for other candidates, Sotto says there will be no frills from his end. Pangilinan says he will continue to focus on highlighting the country's problems and presenting concrete solutions. Ong says he is preparing, or he has been preparing for this since 2019 by studying the issues, but he insists he's not going into political bickering. He says he banks on his image as a doctor who gives advice and tips. Candidate Rizalito David, meanwhile, says he's very much ready to talk about, quote unquote, the message of greatness that Filipinos deserve. And, you know, Ria, let's just highlight this because one very clear example of debates actually upending things would be the 2016 elections. Both President Duterte and Vice President Leni Robredo were not survey frontrunners in the beginning. Duterte nailed the top spot in April at that time when most presidential debates had concluded. included. So as for Vice President, it was candidate Cheese Escudero who led the surveys at the start, with Marcos as the close second, who would eventually overtake him. Meanwhile, if we look at both the SWS and Pulse Asia surveys in 2016, Robredo had the steady but slow increases, with her numbers soaring after the April 10 vice presidential debates. By the last SWS survey, that sometime in May 1 to 3 of 2016, Robredo and Marcos's numbers were so close. Robredo had 28% and Marcos got 29%. Many experts at that time would attribute the sudden peak in Robredo's numbers in her performance in the VP debate. So this time around, a lot of political experts and analysts would say it's still premature to determine who's going to win the elections based on the current surveys that we have, because a lot can still happen. And among those would have to do with how the candidates will perform during the debates. So it's really interesting how their strategies would really come into play in later's debate. Ria?
All right, thanks for that. That was David Santos and Trisha Terada reporting to us live from inside the Quadricentennial Pavilion in UST, the venue of the CNN Philippines vice presidential and presidential debates. Now, COMELEC has approved CNN Philippines' request for accreditation for its vice presidential and presidential debates this weekend. The approval came during the COMELEC's Anbank session on Thursday. And now let's see some comments from netizens. Our Paulo Abrera now joins us for a look. Paulo, what are people saying?
Well, thanks, Rhea. Now, we asked netizens, if you had a chance to ask our vice presidential candidates a question, what would it be? We've got quite a selection here that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be starting with some comments here from Facebook. Sofia Gara asked, to all the candidates, how will you ensure that Philippines will be in good hands if you win the election, especially during COVID crisis and economic fail? Okay, on Ana Oconer over here, also on Facebook, all candidates have big plans to address the problems of the country. Where will you plan to get the funding to support them, she asked. Do you have concrete plans for this? So that's another interesting question here. Please avoid giving other statements such as unity and by stopping corruption. How will you ensure the sustainability of your solutions and ensure that they are safe from being politicized? Another question here, or rather, question thrown from Facebook from Chloe Go. Almost every candidate who ran for office promised to rid the government of corruption, yet corruption still prevails. What concrete action steps can they take to get rid of the government of corruption once and for all? We need detailed action plans that are implementable. Moreover, we know that a lot of corruption and red tape happens at the local level in LGUs. She continues on, but we'll pass on to, or move on rather, to Charles here from Twitter asks, what is trust for you? As we are now living in a time where more and more people in a daily basis is losing their trust with the government. With that, how do you think you could regain that trust, especially if you are elected? All right, we have another comment here from Twitter. Tyrant asks, how do you vision the country to be like after you leave the office in 6 years? And finally, rounding off our selection here, back to Facebook, Orly Villanueva asks, will you continue the programs of Office of VP? Should you win as VP, what will you likely keep and enhance, and what will you discontinue, and why? How will you implement these programs, and what are your priorities? All right, that is the current pulse of the netizens. Now, those are the questions that they are asking. It'll be interesting to see what will be on their minds post-debate. That's what we've got for you. Back to you, Ria.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Paolo. Now, you are watching a special presentation of CNN Philippines on the vice presidential race. We will be back after this short break. Stay tuned.
And what will you discontinue, and why? How will you implement these programs, and what are your priorities? All right, that is the current pulse of the netizens. Now, those are the questions that they are asking. It'll be interesting to see what will be on their minds post-debate. That's what we've got for you. Back to you, Ria.
All right, thanks a lot for that, Paolo. Now, you are watching a special presentation of CNN Philippines on the vice presidential race. We will be back after this short break. Stay tuned.
Zamboanga City. Can Trading General Merchandise. Astoria Regency Hotel, Pasunangka, Zamboanga City. Attorney Wendell Soto. Honorable Rizalito David Matoton. Zenaya International National Food Consumer Trading, SH Thrift Shop, Santa Maria, Zamboanga City. Urban Engineering and Building Contract, RDM, S33 Enterprises, Alfaro Street, Tetuan, Zamboanga City. Ayala Recorder Operators and Drivers Transport Service Cooperative, Sangkula Rice Dealer, Alamia Trading.
Kuha na mga kami, Mike. So, paano? Pabiyahe pa tayo. Sir, hatid ko na po kayo.
This program is brought to you by Asia United Bank Caldon Branch. They are located at Astoria Printers Building, Barangay Zone 2, Sucabon, Zamboanga City. Can Trading General Merchandise. Astoria Regency Hotel, Pasunangka, Zamboanga City. Attorney Wendell Sotto. Honorable Rizalito Litlit Macrohon. Zenaya International Food Consumer Trading. Morben Engineering and Building Contractor. SH Thrift Shop, located at Santa Maria, Zamboanga City. RDM S33 Enterprises, Alfaro Street, Tetuan, Zamboanga City. Ayala Recorder Operators and Drivers Transport Service Cooperative. Sangkula Rice Dealer. Alamia Trading. This portion is brought to you by ang Bumbero ng Bayan, ABB, NFCPI, National Firemen's Confederation of the Philippines Party List.
Welcome back. The CNN Philippines Vice Presidential Debate will be happening in just a few minutes with the help of our partners, the University of Santo Tomas, the venue of our debate, and Microsoft Philippines, who made it possible for us to participate in the event virtually through its state-of-the-art technology. And we still have with us our panel of experts. Just a few more questions before we go. Now, Professor Lavinia, how can a VP make himself or herself relevant other than just, as you said, you know, their job is really to wait for the president to die or become incapacitated or resign or be pushed out of power? How can they make themselves relevant?
Well, ideally, the vice president should get a cabinet job and head an office. And that office gets a special quality because it's the vice president. So when VP Binay was head of the housing departments, it did very well. You know what I mean? When President Estrada was the vice president of FVR, he did also the crime commission. But if it's not possible, like we have in President Duterte, because inexplicably he didn't want to deal with the vice president, at least over all the 6 years. It was a short period. He worked with her. Then the vice president rises up to the occasion, and VP Robredo really rose to the occasion and had his own programs. Because the vice president, even if he's not constitutionally has any job, still represents the country, still represents the government for most people.
Right. It's really up to them how they want to carve out that role for
VP
themselves.
Robredo did a very good job, even without being a cabinet member.
All right. Lastly, let's go to Mr. Holmes. Now, since our system elects a vice president separate from the president, how do the numbers of the VP affect their presidential running mate, if at all? All right. Sir, I think you're on mute. If you could unmute yourself. Thank you.
We have not seen, except for one election for the anthem won. I think it's the structure of the ballot that compels people to select VPs and president separately. What's quite distinct now is that I've seen most of the campaigns, except for one tandem, it's always the president and the vice president together. So maybe there's a higher proportion now of people who may support the vice president who would also extend support to their presidential running mate. That we will see, of course, not just in surveys, but on May 9.
All right. Thank you for that, Ronald Holmes, the president of the survey group Pulse Asia, and constitutional analyst Professor Tony Lavinia. Professor Dennis Coronacion will join us again later when we recap the vice presidential debate. In a few minutes, 7 of the 9 vice presidential candidates will weigh in on some of today's most pressing issues at the CNN Philippines vice presidential debate live from UST. I'm Ria Tanwato Gilio. We'll be back after the debate to break down the highlights.
This Vice Presidential Debate is brought to you by Asia United Bank, Haldon Branch. They are located at Astoria Printers Building, Barangay Zone 2, Sucabon, Zamboanga City. Can Trading General Merchandise, Astoria Regency Hotel, Pasunanca, Zamboanga City. Attorney Wendell Sotto, Honorable Rizalito David Macrohon, Zenaya International Food Consumer Trading, SH Thrift Shop, Santa Maria, Zamboanga City, Nurban Engineering and Building Contractor, RDM, S33 Enterprises, Alfaro Street, Tetuan, Zamboanga City, Ayala Recodo Operators and Drivers Transport Service Cooperative, Sangkula Rice Dealer, Alamia Trading.
This portion is brought to you by ang Bumbero ng Bayan, ABB, NFCPI, National Firemen's Confederation of the Philippines Party List. This program is brought to you by Asia United Bank Haldon Branch. They are located at Astoria Printers Building, Barangay Zone 2, Sucabon, Zamboanga City. Can Trading General Merchandise, Astoria Regency Hotel, Pasunanca, Zamboanga City. Attorney Wendell Sotto, Honorable Rizalito David Macrohon, Zenaya International Food Consumer Trading, Nurban Engineering and Building Contractor, SH Thrift Shop, located at Santa Maria, Zamboanga City. RDM, S33 Enterprises, Alfaro Street, Tetuan, Zamboanga City. Ayala Recodo Operators and Drivers Transport Service Cooperative. Sangkula Rice Dealer. Alamia Trading.
Go out and vote and make a difference.
This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
What are debates for? Sure, it's not mandatory.
Year has just the voters are next Seven candidates for vice president standing side by side
To face the Filipino people.
Filipinos are not that foolish. We are going to do that by taxing the rich.
Kung saan natin dadali ng bayan, doon natin idisenyo ang ating edukasyon.
To make their case.
to explain and defend their positions on public issues.
To be challenged.
Kung susubukan niyo ako, magugulat kayo.
Uunahin natin ang agrikultura at pangingisda.
And to challenge each other.
But more than just telling us what they can do.
Isang batas na nagpapatawag na isang constitutional convention.
Yun din ang gusto namin kasama sa programa namin sa gobyerno yun. Kaming madisiplina uli ang gobyerno.
It's about how they can do it all during their 6-year term.
And if the need arises,
to be ready to step up as chief executive under the country's presidential line of succession.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a CNN Philippines special presentation, The Filipino Votes Vice Presidential Debate 2022. I'm Rico Hizon.
magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Ako si Ruth Cabal, and welcome to all and on Facebook. Syempre, Rico, batiin din natin ang ating virtual audience sa ating naglalakihang screens. Marami dyan mula pa sa iba't ibang lugar at malalayong lugar sa Pilipinas. Different industries, different backgrounds. Thank you, Microsoft Philippines, for making this possible.
Nagpapasalamat kami sa inyong lahat for joining us today. And Ruth, we are extremely excited to welcome 7 out of the 9 vice presidential candidates right here at the Quadricentennial Pavilion at the University of Santo Tomas.
UST has been our trusted partner in our debates. In 2016, we had the VP debate. And 2019, di ba? We had our senatorial debate dito rin sa venue na ito. Maraming salamat, UST. We are very much grateful.
And now, Ruth, it is time to welcome our candidates for Vice President of the Republic for joining us the Philippines. And Ruth, in alphabetical order, to welcome 7 out of the 9 Walden Vice Presidential candidates right here at the Quadricentennial Pavilion at the University of
UST has been our trusted partner in our debates. In 2016, we had the VP debate. And 2019, di ba? We had our senatorial debate dito rin sa venue na ito. Maraming salamat, UST. We are very much grateful.
And now, Ruth, it is time to welcome our candidates for Vice President of the Republic of the Philippines in alphabetical order. Walden Bello. He's a former Akbayan Party List representative, running mate of Labor leader Leody de Guzman.
Our next candidate, pro-life advocate, Rizalito David. Running mate of Dr. Jose Montemayor Jr.
Also with us, economist Manny SD Lopez. He is the lone VP candidate without a running mate. 3 candidates, Ruth, are now on stage. We've got 4 more to go. Time to welcome on stage a cardiologist and social media personality, Dr. Willie Ong. He's running alongside Manila Mayor Isko Moreno Domagoso. Our next candidate, Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan. Running mate of Vice President Leni Robredo.
Also with us, lawyer
in front of you that will serve as your timing device. You'll hear this sound. To remind you, you have 10 seconds left. When your time is up, you will hear this other sound. And we hope by then, candidates, you will quickly wrap up.
At pakiusap din natin, candidates, ha, please don't talk over each other. We will turn off your mic if you interrupt and let the speaker finish within the allotted time. Kasi mas maganda, Rico, pag tuloy-tuloy yung sagot nila
And
para
there
mas
are monitors
maintindihan sila ng ating
in
mga
front of you
manonood.
that will serve as your timing device.
At ng ating
You'll
Filipino
hear
electorate ang
this sound. To remind you, you have 10 seconds left. When your time is up, you will hear this other sound. And we hope by then, candidates, you will quickly wrap up.
At pakiusap din natin, candidates, ha, please don't talk over each other. We will turn off your mic if you interrupt and let the speaker finish within the allotted time. Kasi mas maganda, Rico, pag tuloy-tuloy yung sagot nila para mas maintindihan sila ng ating mga manonood.
At malalaman ng ating audience at ng ating Filipino electorate ang mga plataforma ng ating mga kandidato.
doing business in the country a lot easier. We could attract more investors. We could improve the productivity of our businesses, of our enterprises. At pangalawa po, alam naman natin na maraming nahirapan, especially micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises. And the solution to this is a legal framework to enable them to recover. Yan po at provision of low-interest loans. Marami pong salamat.
We'd like to hear next from Dr. Willie Ong.
Ay, kamusta po sa ating mga televiewers ng CNN? Pasalamat muna tayo sa CNN paggawa nitong debate. Napakaganda po nitong lugar. Kung kaya po tayo tumakbo, simple lang pandemic po talaga. Dahil sa pandemic talagang nasira yung ekonomiya, trabaho, pati tourism natin. Ang partner ko, si Mayor Isko Moreno, sabi niya, Doc Willie, kung hindi pandemic time, baka hindi ikaw ang tamang Vice President. Pero ngayon, dahil pandemic, kailangan natin maayos. Itong pandemic, paulit-ulit patients Hindi po ako politiko, doktor po ako, pero nakikita ko paano bilhin yung pinakamagandang gamot sa inyo para mabuhay kayo at inyong mga anak. Salamat po.
Next, may we hear from Senator Francis Pangilinan.
Magandang araw po sa kanilang lahat.
Doc Willie sa kalusugan, siya bahala sa pabahay, trabaho, edukasyon, foreign affairs.
Pero kung ano man ang meron kinalaman sa agrikultura at pangingisda, yun ang ating tatanggapin. Lahat ng mga kandidato ngayon sa pagka-vice presidente at sa loob ng 20 tutukan.
Now we would like to hear from Carlos Serapio.
Thank you, CNN at mabiyayang panahon, Pilipinas. Ang aking pong pipiliin ay batay din sa pipiliin ng aking Pangulo, si Presidente Faisal Mangundato. Kung ano po ay bibigay niyang tungkulin sa akin, iyon po ang aking gagampanan. Datapwat kung ako'y kanyang tatanungin kung ano ang aking personal na preference dahil po sa aking academic background, sa aking experience in engaging different leaders and functionaries of different nations, I prefer to take the portfolio of the Department of Foreign Affairs. Lalo't higit na dito sa ating rehiyon. At ito po ay napakahalaga. Kahit na pa nga ang aming programa ay ang tanging programa ng transisyon. At sa transition po, mahalaga na maunawaan ng ibang bansa kung ano po ang ating patutunguhan na sistema. Salamat po.
Senate President Tito Sotto.
Salamat po ng marami. The Dangerous Drugs Board and the Department of Interior and Local Government. I will be able to implement the Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002 completely. Republic Act 9165, of which I was the principal author of, and created the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency. The present situation calls for the attention of government to the problem of drug abuse, not just illegal drugs. Those are two different animals. Kapag ang inasikaso mo lang ay yung supply reduction strategy na enforcement lamang at may kakulangan sa prosecution, you will never solve the problem of illegal drugs. But if you concentrate on prevention and rehabilitation, which is partly the demand reduction strategy that is necessary to combat it, I feel we will be able to complete and implement well the laws that we have passed before.
Ngayon narinig na po natin ang opening statements ng ating mga kandidato. Susunod na bubusisiin natin mga mahahalagang issue. And among the top voting issues this 2022 is the COVID-19 pandemic. Paano kaya nila tutugunan yung mga naging epekto ng pandemya sa ating bansa? Alamin natin yan.
And after the break, we'll have specific questions for two of our senators. We'd like to hear next from Kiko Pangilinan and Tito Sotto about the recent Senate Blue Ribbon Committee report on the pharmaceutical controversy. You're watching a CNN Philippines special presentation, The Filipino Votes, Vice Presidential Debate 2022. We'll be right back. The Filipino Votes, Vice Presidential Debate 2022.
This Vice
We'll be right back.
Presidential Debate is brought to you by Asia United Bank, Halden Branch. We are located at Astoria Printers Building, Barangay Zone 2, Sucabon, Zamboanga City. Prime Trading, General Merchandise, Astoria Regency Hotel, Paso Nangka, Zamboanga City. Attorney Wendell Sotto. Honorable Rizalito David, Zanaya International Food Consumer Trading, SH Fruit Shop, Santa Maria, Zamboanga City.
Dumarami na ang may abilidad
para makatipid sa kuryente at gas. RDM, S33 Enterprises, Alfaro Street, Tetuan, Zamboanga City. Ayala Recodo Operators and Drivers Transport Service Cooperative, Sangkula Rice Dealer,
Nagka-carpooling ang mga
Trading.
magkakakilala.
Renewable energy source. Abilidad nating magkakuryente. We have the energy ability.
This portion
energy
is
efficiency
brought to
and
you by
security.
ang Bumbero ng Bayan, ABB, NFCPI, National Firemen's Confederation of the Philippines Party List.
Ang manage ng blood sugar at gutom. Kaya't wag mag-diabetes. Mag-diabetasol.
Mag-Milo breakfast every day. Milo breakfast every day. Help make breakfast more nutritious with Milo. May milk at champion energy nutrients. Tulong para shout sa school and play. Milo every day.
Pabigat ba ang iba't ibang pain? Mag-Advil ka na. Sa pabigat na pain, dito ka sa mas malakas kaysa paracetamol laban sa iba't ibang pain. Para lakas ginawa. Switch to Advil.
Sa One Pacman Party List, lagi kang maglalaban. Knockout ang mahal na gamutan.
Depensa laban sa kahirapan.
Servisyo ngayong pandemya.
One Pacman Party List, laging maasahan. 161 sa balota.
Pabigat ba ang iba't ibang pain?
Mga mommies, gawing
Mag-Advil ka
all
na.
wonderful ang
Sa pabigat na
tortang
pain,
talong. With Maggi Magic
dito ka sa
Sarap,
mas
may
malakas
sarap
kaysa
at
paracetamol
aluman, dagdag
laban
onion
sa
at
iba't
garlic,
ibang
real
pain.
meat at spices. With
Para
Maggi
lakas
Magic
ginawa.
Sarap,
Switch to Advil.
Sa One Pacman Party List, lagi kang
ang pang.
knockout ang mahal na
Everest
gamutan.
refrigerators with odor control filter that absorbs impurities and helps eliminate food odors. Everest refrigerators with odor control filter. Fresh smelling food always.
Mga mommies, gawing all-in wonderful ang tortang talong. With Maggi Magic Sarap, may sarap at aluman ng dagdag onion at garlic, real meat at spices. With Maggi Magic Sarap, nasa ko may sarap na buhay.
May 9th is Decision Day for Filipinos. 18,000 plus seats up for grabs in general elections in just a few more months. Among them, the position of Vice President.
And here on stage are 7 of the 9 vice presidential candidates, and they are ready to answer your questions on many issues that matter to each and every one of us. One of them, the COVID-19 pandemic. Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates predicted the COVID-19 outbreak back in 2015. and he has warned yet again about the emergence of more pandemics in the future. Here is our next question. As Vice President, what concrete steps will you take to prepare our country for the next pandemic? Candidates,
to answer your question,
the more specific your answer, the better. Manny Lopez, we will start off with you.
One of them,
Thank you very much for this very relevant question. I happen to be a Bill Gates reader and also a veteran advocate of more effective disaster planning and management, among which is pandemic management. Pandemic is something that we have faced in the past, and we will be facing as well in the future. And my general prescription is for a science-based,
very relevant question.
cost-effective, and pragmatic approach to pandemic management.
Advocate of more
Because
effective disaster planning
this
and
is
management,
a crisis,
among which
in our case,
is
of
pandemic
biblical
management.
proportions.
Pandemic
And
is,
accordingly, the
something
general
that,
prescription
we have
is
faced in the past,
our bayanihan
and,
spirit,
we will be
our
facing as
caring
well
for each other.
in the future.
And if I
my
can
general
go into
prescription
specifics,
is for a science-based,
those especially
cost-effective,
in the
and pragmatic
level
approach
of
to pandemic management.
decision making
because
with regards
this
to
is
our
a
pandemic
crisis.
response,
In our
mitigation,
case of
and
biblical
recovery
proportions.
strategy.
And accordingly,
We should make it a
the
point
general
that
prescription is
we have to
our
have
bayanihan
policies
spirit,
that
our
specifically
caring for each
address
other.
the issues
And,
beyond
if I can
political
go into
and
specifics,
commercial interests. Because this is what really
in the,
bothers our pandemic response.
level
And
of,
we could do better.
decision-making
And we could do better by
with
caring
regards
more
to our
for each
pandemic
other and for
response,
caring
mitigation,
for our country.